Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Scott Groves here with my buddy, Dan Lesniak. We're in GoBundance together. We've been friends. I was actually on his podcast earlier today. We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff because Dan's a pretty unique dude. He's obviously got the branding behind him, HyperFast Agent. That's his coaching kind of growth and development for realtors. He's ran a very, very successful brokerage for years, even in what's kind of a down market right now, coming to you in August of 2022, closed 60, 70 transactions last month. Also knee deep in a bunch of development deals. I know you do condo conversions and ground up conversions or ground up construction and all kinds of stuff. So a million places to go based on kind of where the economy is, where the housing market is. Why don't we go super local first? And Dan, tell me what's going on. What's your backyard? Where do you kind of mostly live and play in the real estate game? I think you're in the DC area, but maybe you've got some other news you want to talk about. And you know, real estate's always hyper local. So what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, the DC market, I think like a lot of other places, has been crazy the last few years. That's where our main business is. Carrie started selling homes, I think, in 2003 for new home builders. I started selling in this area back in 2011, really. 2012 was my first year. We met in 2013 and I've grew a brokerage, real estate team, if you will. It's been 8-9 years in its current format. And in 2021, we did nearly 1,100 deals and the market was crazy. We started to see a little bit of transaction slowdown the last couple months as mortgage rates have risen. I think a lot of people have seen that. We really haven't seen changes in prices much. So the double-digit increases are not there right now. And this 10 offer bidding war is not there, but things are still moving. Supplies 2 to 3 months. So it's kind of like a normal seller's market, really, not an insane seller's market. And
right.
We'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, you might even take like a contingent offer, or there's not 20 offers per property, but still there's no one out there in the major metropolitan areas, the people I'm talking to at least, that are getting like a deal, right? Sellers aren't fire selling property. It's still a healthy market.
Yeah. And it's not that, the thing about real estate, it is hyper local. So we actually, since COVID started, we've been living primarily in South Florida. We come up at least twice a month for the real estate business. And the Florida market, you're still seeing, depending on the area, multiple offers and all of that. There's still a huge influx there. So I think, in general, that market is probably more volatile up and down than something like DC, where the federal government, is, and everything's kind of steady there. So, different markets, I think, across the country are going to respond differently. But I think in general, we'll probably see fewer transactions and, flattening of prices. And maybe as interest rates go down, or as they kind of started to, maybe we'll see them climb up again,
Love it. And, it's interesting. I've got two questions when you kind of explain your current work situation. One is obviously COVID has changed the game dramatically of being able to work from afar, telecommute, things of that nature. So I'd love to hear, in a business where people probably think you have to be local, what are some lessons you've learned over the last couple of years of working remote from Florida, but still running a thriving business in DC? And then I want to hear what it's like running a business with your wife, because my wife and I flirt with that idea once in a while, and we think we're probably not a model match to work together. But either one of those, lessons learned from, this new Zoom world post-COVID, or lessons learned from working with your spouse. I'd love to touch on both.
Yeah, the COVID transition was interesting. In 2018, we bought our first home in Florida. It was going to be an Airbnb that we used, once a quarter. And we had this plan of like every year doing a month longer, total time. And over 5 or 6 years, we were going to get to like 6 months. So we could, be Florida residents, save a little on income tax. And, when we first started doing it, we spent less time there than we planned because it was just booked all the time. This is back in 18 and 19. And we kind of learned you have to, like, if you do a second home and make it an Airbnb, which I think is a great strategy, you have to block off the time when you want to use it if you're doing well, or it's gone. So in 2020, we were coming down for our normal, like 1 to 2 week kind of per quarter time in the beginning of March. And I had a couple events I was supposed to speak at locally or regionally that week. So Carrie went down first she drove the kids. She did the drive down, and her mom actually came to do it. Her mom's from Oregon, and they were starting to drive down. And, she's like, I approach road trips of like, okay, it's 1,000 miles. We'll do that in 14 hours. And she's like, oh, let's do 2 or 3 days. Right. So we kind of have differences in that. So I think like 2 days in, she's like halfway there, which is like unbelievable to me. But I told her like, hey, they started to shut down restaurants up here, and like they canceled the Wizards game. It's, you might want to turn back. I don't know what's going to happen. They're canceling things. We have to buy Purell for the office. It's all this like stuff you never did. My events started to get canceled, and she was like, no, I'm good. If anything happens, I'd probably rather be down in Florida, in March. So, her mom got scared on the way down, got off in Orlando. We're down in Deerfield Beach, Southern Florida, but they stopped in Orlando. They thought they might do Disney, but they closed Disney. And her mom flew back to Oregon because she was worried. I don't know if you remember back then, there was like rumors that they were going to cancel all air travel. Do you remember like when that rumor was going around?
Yeah, for sure.
Like kind of insane. But she went down there, and then I flew that Friday. This was like the first Friday after like the NBA shut down and locked, I flew, and it was like odd because it was like so early, people weren't wearing masks yet. But then the DCA airport was like it was a ghost town.
Right.
And I got on the JetBlue flight, a Friday night flight from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and there were 5 people on the plane. It was insane. Like it was like The Walking Dead or post-apocalyptic world. It was insane. And before I flew down, I filmed a couple of videos on YouTube that I sent out to the team on like how to run sales meetings on Zoom. And we had already been kind of familiar with Zoom and online meetings. We've been doing it for a few years prior for our training company. And I told Carrie we should switch all the appointments to Zoom or give people the option. And she didn't want to do it at first because she's traditional sales. Like you get them in person, get them to sign, right? Present the value, get their attention. And like, we better switch to Zoom. So we did. And, it's kind of leading into how we shifted to running it online. But the week prior to the lockdowns, our ISA team, our inside sales agents booked like 70 appointments. The week after lockdowns, they booked 68, but half of them were on Zoom, or a little over half. So it's like, had we not made that switch, we might have gone from 70 appointments to 20. So I think we were fast to move on the consumer facing side of that. Mm-hmm. And that's, we didn't really have a bad month, even like the 30 days after.
Right.
And then it got crazy. Like 2 months later, it really got crazy. But yeah, in terms of like running the business and training the team, everyone got used to Zoom meetings. So then when I think Virginia didn't allow more than 10 people in an office setting or Northern Virginia anyway, for like 2 or 3 months. So by that time, Florida was like fully open again.
Right.
It was like back to normal, but we just had to get good at Zoom training meetings and good at all meetings on Zoom. But we had kind of already been there because of our coaching program. So it wasn't a huge transition. And as things got back to normal, or more normal, because they're not quite there, depending on where you are still, we would do like one meeting every other week would be in person versus online, right? And that it didn't take us too long to figure that out. I think if there's any benefit now in this post-pandemic world, it's that people are more used to running things remote and virtual. And, some of the value of brick and mortar is just not there anymore. I think it's I think it's still very important to be physically present with your operators at regular intervals with your team members, because you need to maintain the culture, and it's hard, I think, to do that when you're just 100% on Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've a really good friend and a coaching client who's in your neck of the woods, Lisa West. She's a loan officer, had done real estate for a while. And then when COVID hit, luckily, like 2 months before that, she had come back into the mortgage world. Her husband's in the military. She does a lot of veteran loans. She's a phenomenal loan officer. And it was interesting for her because it's the first coaching client I've ever had who had to rebuild or build 100% of her realtor relationships without doing the traditional coffee, meet and greet, happy hour. It was like, hey, kind of old school dial for dollars. Let's jump on Zoom, see if we want to work together. I've got nothing to do but sit in my home office and process loans all day. And luckily she's crushing it. I mean, she's gone from, zero to top producer within 2.5 years, which is phenomenal. I should probably introduce you guys. But it is a different world, and it's been interesting to see who can adjust and thrive and who is kind of so set in their ways with an older model that they're not making it. So tell me about working with your wife. How did that come about, and how do you balance that, keeping your marriage intact while also, all businesses are hard. So it can't be all roses, right?
Well, we did it from day one. So she started her general, she was with a new home sales and then a new condo sales brokerage, and before she got into general brokerage. But she started with Remax. I started with Century 21 my first year, and then she had already made the move to Keller. I still didn't know who she was, but at the end of my first year in real estate, I started a title company. And because I saw other brokerages doing this model, I paid attention to the HUD, so I saw what the Century 21 broker was getting per deal. And I'm like, well, other brokerages are like selling parts of the title company and this, that, and the other to their agents. Ours doesn't. Told me that was illegal, which I thought was weird, because how could like big name brokerages be doing it then? But then I hooked up, partnered with an attorney, and started a title company. And I started selling shares to the Century 21 agents. And, when they found out, they gave me this like 72-hour ultimatum to leave. And I was like, all right, well, I was like the top salesperson in this office in my first year in the business. I'll leave. I took a couple agents with me as well. And I went to Keller Williams, and the broker there was like, oh, you're starting a title company. Great. You should get Carrie Scholl's business. She's like the number one agent in this office. So it was like, completely kind of different view and attitude towards that. So that was like when I first met her. I was trying to get her title business, actually. And I was kind of her competitor at the time. So we kind of, and I actually filed an ethics complaint against her. It was, she likes to tell that story, but yeah, I kind of just did it to be a jerk, because she was marketing in my a building that I did like half of my business in, and I'll just say she was being loosey-goosey with statistics. But one of her interns put an ad in the wrong section on, I think it was on Craigslist, like in the for sale by owner, and so I filed a complaint just to mess with her, and I withdrew it, but before it went anywhere. But so that was going on. I was trying to get her title business, and I was competing with her. So we kind of became friends, and then started dating, got married, and then we combined both of our teams. We had I think she had 8 people at the time. I had 4 or 5, and we put our teams, merged our teams, and then about a year later started our own independent brokerage. And so we've been working together from the beginning. There's definitely, from time to time would be personality conflicts or disagreements on business decisions. And, there'd be times where it was emotional, but it is a little bit more challenging when it's a loved one or relationship rather than just a business partner. So
Right.
you kind of have to like step back, get look at your overall joint vision, joint goals. And I'd say sometimes, just like kind of let the other person have their way, even if you think it's wrong. And we've also had a number of real estate coaches. So I think sometimes having outside perspective
Yep.
can help. And we're certainly not perfect at it, and it probably took us longer than maybe it should have to define like definite swim lanes. I think that's important, and with any business relationship, right? Like who's doing who, what's the role going to be, what happens if there's a disagreement. So I think getting those defined, which I think we've got pretty dialed in now, helps.
I love that. And, one of the things I think about when I think of you is I'm always trying to balance in my mind, like subject matter expert, focus on one thing and be world-class at it versus what's kind of a, new buzzword the last 10 years, fully integrated, blah, 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 vertical integration. And so when I think of you, I'm like, oh, vertical integration. Dan kind of exemplifies that, right? It's like you guys are doing the sales, then you guys are finding development deals, then you're helping, bundle the money for the development deals, and you're basically being the, I guess you're the syndicate per se, for those deals. And then you also have the title company, and then you also have your agents that are reselling those deals. And I know that you've invested in some other things, like coaching and whatnot, running a coaching program that are all integrated in the real estate business. Can you speak a little bit towards, man, I'm really excited we branched out and did these 4, 5, 6, 7 things all within the real estate industry? Or if you could go back in time, would it be like, you know what, we would just focus on sales only, and we would have done 2,700 transactions last year instead of 1,100. I'm always wondering, like, the push and pull of opening other businesses that are related to the core business versus just focusing on the core business.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much time that business will take away from your core business. So like adding the title and things like that, like if you have good partners, you're not really going to do much. You're really just marketing and lead capture for that business. I think the coaching one has been challenging. That takes a lot of your time, and it takes, I think coaching takes like years to kind of set up and automate compared to a sales business. So I do think that, the coaching business is time intensive. The acquisition, the sales and of development deals, and even the fundraising, that doesn't take a lot of core time away. The project management, however, does. So it got harder in the last 2 years to build. Supply chains are not fun. Labor shortages aren't fun. So, I think we probably in 5 or 6 or 7 kind of related businesses, and there's probably 2 elements of those that have taken a lot of time. But I think the main thing is like, how closely related is it to your core business, and can you get good operating partners in it? Because if you do that, then the time isn't that necessarily big of an issue, right? Mm-hmm. So it all depends on who your partner is.
Yeah, I know we're in a couple of different groups together where the idea of that book, who not how, is a big concept amongst people in GoBundance and Front Row Dads and the Miracle Morning community, a bunch of places you and I have kind of treaded over the years. That was a big concept before that book even came out. And then I think that book really helped solidify it. So, the $1 million question is, how do you find good operating partners? When you're talking about a highly compensated, highly rewarded team member or partner who's going to help run the title company or the development business or the, real estate firm while you and your wife are in Florida with the kids, how do you find, source, train, trust these people? Is it a long interview process and immediately dumping off a ton of responsibility on them? Is it, hey, hire anybody and then build them up over time and see who proves themselves to be responsible? Like, what's the process for you to find good operating partners?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just driving leads. I think the bigger you kind of grow your marketing, your branding, your influence, the more leads for all of your business you can drive. You're going to get more inspired, more quality people. We've done both too. You mentioned like growing people over time versus hiring proven people to come in. Both have worked for us. One of our best and most important employees is like our COO and our like HR person combined. She's been with us since 2014 and started as a transaction coordinator. Mm-hmm. So I think both can work. You got to get in front of a lot of people, and you're gonna screw it up. You're gonna hire people that you think are gonna be awesome. Like no one ever hires someone and thinks they're gonna suck.
Right.
So we've definitely hired people that we thought were gonna be awesome, and then like afterwards we were like, what the hell were we thinking? So right. It happens.
Tell me about one of those mulligans, right? Tell me about something you'd love to take back. Maybe we don't have to go into the personnel side of it because that can get a little touchy. But maybe it's a development deal. Maybe it's a real estate transaction you wish you would have said no to. Give us a Dan's greatest failure that you wish you would have steered clear of or was not nearly as profitable as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think on the development side, we've had one or two builders where one of them was on our personal home actually, but we've had one or two builders that didn't perform, took too long, or cost went higher, or it led to problems with the end buyer and then lawsuits. So we had a seven-figure on profit, or pro forma profit deal that turned into something that was like nothing. The only people that got paid on it were our investors. They got all their money, but Carrie and I just had 4 years of headache. That deal we've been out of for 2 years now, so it's in the rear view mirror enough that I don't get sick anymore thinking about it. But
yeah, that's great.
But yeah, we had to like step in really to finish that. Like me and Carrie and our team members, we've got great team members here at the real estate team. We had to really hire the last subcontractors and manage them to get that across the finish line and get out of it. So, which is a great, I guess, learning experience. It's like, learn how to vet your partners a little bit better up front. And we also know more about the construction business now than we wished.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of that, walk us through, I know you have a couple deals right now in DC where I believe you guys are doing apartment conversions to condos. Is that correct?
Somewhat, yeah. So we've got about 150 different units in our pipeline, either, done and under contract or being built or permitting. So but the typical model is we'll find something that can be turned into 10 units. Their biggest one's 34 units. So that's kind of the range. It's a mix of different buildings that we take over. Sometimes they're apartments, sometimes they're mixed-use buildings, sometimes they're row homes. So, we go in, we get them permitted as condos. It's considered a renovation, but for all on paper anyway, but in reality it's a new build, so it's going down to maybe one wall or the shared walls on row homes, and everything's new framing, so it's pretty much new construction. And we look for deals where we're going to have like a 25% or higher margin, and they can be anywhere from like 18 months to 3 years on some of the longer ones. We've done this with single families too. We just couple months ago, we sold our last single family project. So we're strictly condos right now. And most of our financing on these comes from banks, local and regional banks. The terms are, it's usually prime plus a quarter or something like that. So most of our loans have fluctuated over the last couple of years from like 4.5 to, I think they're up to like 6 now, with prime going up. But that funds about 80% of the acquisition and development. Usually the rest is from investors. We've got about 110 active investors, and they typically invest in 1 or 2 projects, or something like that, and they get paid a 15% preferred return. So they've got equity that sits basically right behind the bank in the first lien. And our sales team at the end of the process sells them. We really focus on pre-selling and trying to get as many under contracts before they're fully completed. And that's if you kind of think that where Carrie started, I think it goes back to like her bread and butter. Like she started in 2003 selling new homes. So that's what she did for the first 6-7 years is sell new construction, sell pieces of paper, because when you pre-sell, you're selling a piece of paper.
A piece of paper and a drawing, right? Like I promise the house is going to look real good when we're done. You mentioned the 25% profit model. So walk me through this real quick. And we can just use round numbers. So let's say, there's a property that you can buy for 10 million bucks, and you're going to convert it into 30 condos or whatever. And you're going to have to put in another $10 million of renovation, construction at whatever level. And then you're looking to exit for, in this case, 25%, $25 million, much of which get returned to investors. And then there's some left over, obviously, for you and your wife and the team. Am I conceptualizing that correctly?
Yeah, pretty close. We add the carrying costs and the preferred return into those.
Can you turn down the air, Chris?
Numbers. So, ideally our hurdle rate is 25% after paying carrying cost and the preferred return. So we want that kind of margin. And, the reason is when delays happen, which a lot of our projects in 20 got delayed because the entire industry, we want to have a buffer, or if there's a pullback, we want to have a buffer. And, Washington, D.C. is relatively stable. Like the core parts of it only went down about 10% in 08, 09. So,
oh, wow.
I figure if we can handle 10, 15, 20% drop in sales price and still get out, we're probably good. You never know what could happen. There's no guarantee, but I don't think we'll see something that's like twice as bad as 08 and 09.
Yeah. And when you're targeting neighborhoods for these larger projects, I mean, obviously you're having to project potential sales prices a year, 2 years, 3 years out. Are you looking for areas that are like brand new in their kind of gentrification? Are you going into more low to moderate income houses? Do you only want the super, uppity areas that have a Starbucks on every corner and they've already stabilized? Like, where are you kind of trying to target the projects, since you probably have a year to 3 years for the market or the area to catch up?
Yeah, we're not going to be the first person there. Like, we're not going to plant the flag of, redeveloping this area. We don't have to be the, we're typically not like the last though either. So we try to at least have other ones that have already sold.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to be an area where, a young lady would feel comfortable walking a small, cute, fluffy dog, if you know what I mean.
Right,
so,
right.
Like we don't want to be like the first developer in there. And we have a mix. So we've got some areas where I'd say we're kind of closer to being the first, but not the first. And in those parts of DC, we've got some starter condos for like 300,000, and the bigger ones in those buildings are 600. But then we also have some projects in other parts of DC that are further along, like Petworth, Columbia Heights, other Northwest neighborhoods. And, in some of those, like the cheapest thing in the building is like 700, and there's, $1 million, $1.2 million condos. So we have a mix of both types.
Interesting. And what's the I'm always interested in this. What's the expectation of the fit and finish of the $400,000 buyer versus the $1.2 million buyer? Are they truly just buying neighborhood, or is there a huge, uptick in fit, finish, fixtures, unit amenities, gyms, pools, things like that? What are you guys looking for when you're selling to the higher end buyer, maybe versus like the first time buyer? Is the demand curve different, or are they really just buying convenience based on the neighborhood?
No, neighborhood plays, like location, that plays a big role. So I think like every location for that kind of time period has an upper and lower bound that it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to you can't overbuild and, outsell the neighborhood. So location, I think, definitely gives you an upper and lower bound. Some of it's based on size. So there's, our $300,000 place is probably like 500 square feet.
Right.
The one we sold a few months ago, we've got this 11 unit deal in Columbia Heights area, which is a really great area. It's 11 condos. The first two were done because of how zoning works. We were piecing together row homes. We were able to build those faster. So the first two were already complete. The next 9 are probably another 4 months away. That first penthouse unit sold for about 1.1. That was 1,800 square feet, 4 bedrooms, rooftop deck. So I would say size is a large factor as well. And then, our 800 to $1.2 million condos have a different level of finish than our 300 to 600. So we kind of have 2 to 3 levels of finish based on the price point. Mm-hmm. Functionality, it's the same. Like, it's stone counters, it's just nicer granite, right? It's right. A refrigerator, but one's KitchenAid, one is Sub-Zero,
right?
So, yeah. So it's a lot of that stuff is is the same, but different levels. But I think the things that really drive are the size and the neighborhood.
Yeah. And then, your investors, you mentioned you like to give a 15% preferred return. So for example, on that condo that you exited for $1 million, whatever your upfront cash was, your renovations, your carrying costs, are your investors basically just parking money and they're getting a 15% annual return, which is awesome? Or are they getting that 15% return and then some upside of the deal? Or are you basically just paying 15% in interest to carry that additional money from your investors, and then they're made whole with their principal, but there's no upside on the deal itself?
Yeah, so it's not interest because it's not a loan; it's preferred equity. But
okay.
So just so everyone's
clear
on that, but it's same principle, but they don't have upside beyond that. To answer your question, so we chose this model because I looked at a lot of typical syndication deals, and prior to COVID, which is when I instituted this, they would typically offer like a 6 pref, and they had like a 15 to 17 was their targeted IRR. Now during COVID, a lot of them hit 20, 25 IRRs, right, because of cap rate compression, rents going up. I don't know how long that will happen, but our whole argument to investors was, you don't know when you get into this syndication deal if you're going to get 6 or if you're going to get 10 or 30. With us, it's 15, and it's not guaranteed, but we're putting our own time and money in this deal, and we don't get anything in return for it until you get your 15.
Right.
So that is our value proposition to investors, and it's a different, I guess, risk profile and different investor that would want that. They get paid at the end of the project, although in the last year and a half, we rolled out a fund that is diversified into all of our deals, and because we're in so many now and we're, selling multiple a year, if you invest in the fund, it is an annual distribution based on all of them, as opposed to being in one deal and getting paid at the end. And usually the payments to investors start happening around the 65 to 75% like sold level. So that's about what it takes for the investors to start getting paid back.
Cool. And so let's go back to the first model before you had the fund and before you had kind of ongoing projects kind of feeding that replenishment of money. Just so I'm conceptualizing this correctly, I give you $100,000 to go turn a condo project or an apartment project into a condo project. It takes exactly 2 years to return the money because whatever, there's some construction delays or whatever. I get my $130,000 back because I made 15% a year on my $100,000. And, and assuming the building sells and real estate doesn't take a big giant crapola, it's about as good as we can get to a safer investment. Without putting in a CD at a bank, because obviously there's an underlying property. Like you said, you and the team are not taking any money out of the deal until the investor gets paid. But it's like, give you $100,000, I'll see you in 6 months or a year or 2 years, and I'll get my 15% a year rate of return back.
Yeah, no,
easy enough.
You summarized it pretty well.
Cool, man. And where are you looking going forward? You and I talked on your podcast about we both think there's going to kind of continue to be this upward pressure on prices and property demand. And, whether it's the government or whether it's zoning or whether it's demographics or whatnot, there's probably just not going to be enough housing supply for all the people that buy houses. So what are you guys looking for? Are you looking to stay in DC and double down on what you already know? Are you looking to expand out and start doing projects in Florida? Like, what's on the horizon for Dan's team as far as development?
Yeah, well, we did start doing smaller projects, if you will, in Florida. We did it all with our own money, and that is different than our DC model. Florida, I was a little hesitant, kind of being new, to go in and flip. So because Florida's more volatile. Like, they saw a 50% drop in 2008. The run up in Florida has been huge. I grew up down there, but our only investing experience in South Florida was that first Airbnb condo. Right before COVID happened, we bought the lot next door to that one. We started building our own house, which we're wrapping up kind of soon, or close to it anyway. But we also started buying new properties down there, or not new, but new for us, properties that we would put into our Airbnb system. So now we own that original Airbnb. We have another single family Airbnb in Fort Lauderdale. We just renovated a 4-bedroom duplex. So it's got 4 bedrooms on each side. That's right by the Lauderdale, by the sea beach. And I'm about to start a renovation duplex in Pompano. And then, in addition to that, when we moved down after like 2 months, we were like, what are we going to do with our empty, $2.5 million home in Arlington? Seems like a waste. So we started Airbnb-ing that. And so now we run, I guess, 5 doors. And when this next renovation is done, we'll have 7. And I kind of like that model for Florida for now. But I'm looking to do more things that we hold. But I don't know if that'll be in DC or Florida or other areas. I really love the short-term rental model. So I think I want to do more of that.
Nice, man. I got a couple rapid fire questions for you, just like we finished up your podcast that I want to ask you, because I know your time's super valuable. A couple best things you're doing. Being kind of like in 2 different cities and running a thriving business and being busy. What's the best thing you and your wife right now are doing as parents for your kids?
I think homeschooling our kids. So we have 2 nannies that homeschooled their kids, and they're really good at it. And it was always something we thought of, but COVID kind of helped push that over the edge. And that's just like opened up a lot of cool time with them, I think. So
I love that. And this can be a $2 app on your iPhone, or this can be a $200,000 COO of your business. what's the best thing you're spending money on right now that gives you the most leverage and the best, kind of the best bang for your buck? What's the best thing you're spending money on?
Well, I'll stick with like the $2 app, although I think it's a little bit more monthly, but Guesty is an app that we use for our short-term rentals. It syndicates all of the calendars. We can plug in smart pricing tools. We can automate guest messaging. We can change the locks to the guests. There's all sorts of crazy things you can do. My director of investor relations runs all of our Airbnbs, even though she's in DC. So she's managing our Airbnbs in Florida. But that Guesty app, if you're going to do short-term rentals, is amazing.
So it's amazing that we're basically in Star Trek and nobody appreciates it, that you can own and run 5 pieces of property around the United States from a $10 phone app. That's epic. Great pick there. For first-time investors, interest rates are higher than they were a year ago. Property values seem expensive. If you're a young investor, you're my 20-year-old son who is going to get gifted a down payment for his 21st birthday, or you're a 30-year-old couple who socked away a little bit of money. What's the first property investment you're making? Condo, multi-unit, keep renting and buying investment property? What's the first property investment young investors need to think about making?
I think they should do house hacking because they can take advantage of owner-occupied financing, so they can still get pretty good rates, and they have to live somewhere anyway. But if you do it right, you can live for free or have cash flow. Love
it. And then this is my favorite question, because I feel like I need to move this question to the first question of the interview, because I feel like I can learn so much about people. I'm a crazy movie nut. What's your favorite movie and why?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, you are the second person. This is the first repeat out of 81 podcasts. You're the second one who said Shawshank Redemption. So why is that your favorite movie?
Yeah, I saw it, in high school, I think. Just kind of love the story of this guy who was, wrongly put in jail and then, outsmarted the system to and everyone there to get out. I think it was just a pretty powerful story.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's something in that movie for everyone, because I've read articles of, why Shawshank Redemption is the best conservative movie ever made. Why Shawshank Redemption is the best libertarian movie ever made because he outsmarts the system. Why Shawshank Redemption is the best progressive movie ever made because it shows the abuses of our legal system. And it's like, there's something in that movie for everybody, and it's just an absolute masterpiece. So, Dan, thanks for being on, man. We'll have to do this again. And I've actually got your whole pitch deck on the investor slides and stuff. I'm going to be looking at that. And I just appreciate you taking time, man.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thanks for letting me come on the show. And if people, listening, watching, want to learn more, you can always go to the HyperFast Agent podcast or follow me on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I love talking to Dan is we on Instagram, and it's Lesniak, Lesniak, for those of you listening. Dan goes hard in the paint on Instagram. He's not scared to speak his mind about what he thinks is going on in the real estate world and whatnot. And I love it because I know it comes from a place of service, where you want people to do better in their career and you want them to do better in their investments and you want them to do better in property. And I love that you're just a no bullshit guy on all your social media. So thanks for being genuine, man. And we'll have you on the next time there's some market disruption.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Dan.